Welcome to the Gospel According to podcast, the first and only podcast looking at the intersection of pop culture and the Christian faith. I'm Dan Ulrich, and I'm joined as always by my co-host. You may know him as the guy always taking the scenic route. That's Dave Hallahan.
Yep, that's me, one with nature, take the long way, see God's beautiful creation.
Take the long way home. And we are joined today by a special guest, to teach us, to implore us. We brought in a professional in this field. We brought in somebody that is way more knowledgeable about this than us. You may know him as Ambush. That's John Chaffee.
Yeah. What's up? Thank you so much. This is fun. It's already fun. This is good times.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to have good. And so today's episode is looking at the gospel according to hiking. So, John, tell everybody why you are especially can inform us on this topic. What are your credentials?
My credentials, I guess there's two parts. One would be I have a ministry background. I've been in ministry since college. So I actually just crested 20 years of youth ministry and church ministry and camp ministry. Nice. But a few years ago, I did the entirety of the Appalachian Trail. So I hiked from Georgia to Maine over about 6.5 months, slept outside, encountered bears and moose and all types of people from every decade of life. Plus, I also just really enjoy theology. So I've got the MDiv as well. Yeah.
So we have both sides of it. We have a hiker and a theologian. Perfect to help us understand the gospel.
Not a ton of people that I know with like hiker theologian in their Instagram bio line,
That's kind of true. Yeah.
So I like it. That's good. You say you encountered bear and moose.
Yeah.
What do those encounters look like? Like you're up close with them, or you just saw them in the distance? They stole your food. You rode one.
The bear instances were at closest, maybe 10 feet away. So there was a few times where I was in Virginia and I was hiking along and I look up and all of a sudden I saw 2 bear cubs and I was terrified.
Right.
Because I had no idea where the mama bear was. And if I was between the mama and the cubs, I would be dead. So fortunately, the mom came around from a bush. The 2 cubs saw him and then bolted off. So I was pretty close to cubs, not to the mama, though. That was good.
Yeah.
But then the other time, I walked around a boulder when I was in Maine, and I was about 8 feet, maybe 7 feet from a moose. And that was terrifying because they are these gigantic, awkward horses that when they run, it's almost like you can almost see, like when you throw a rock into the water, it ripples. And you can kind of see the ground ripple when these more than a ton animals. It's terrifying.
Yeah, there's that famous viral video of a moose in like full sprint, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
They look majestic when they're slow, but I mean, they can walk over a car like how we walk over a sidewalk.
Yeah. It is wild. My hiking experience is basically I've watched Alone, and so I'm pretty sure I'm an expert. But whenever they're out in the woods and they see a bear or think they might be near a bear, they say, "Hey bear, hey bear." Is there some sort of official training that tells you to say "Hey bear" when there's a bear around?
No.
I'm always so confused. I think the idea is to make your presence known, right? You don't want to surprise a bear.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they're doing it. But I'm like, you literally can say anything. Why do all of you say "Hey bear"? So you don't know. That's just
you just said all you as if it's already a blanket statement. It's just Hollywood. That's what that is.
No, well, it's a reality show, so it's Alone contestants.
It's real. It's reality.
That's okay. What I mean by all of you is all of the people on. Maybe it was just like the first season of Alone, and then people are on Alone and they feel like, well, this is what I'm supposed to say now. So.
Well, it's a Brian Regan joke too. Hey bear, hey.
Oh, that might be why. Yeah.
Hey bear, hey bear, hey.
All right. Well, That was the only question I wanted to get answered, and
All right, so
guess I'm
thank
lea
you for joining us today.
I'm leaving disappointed, but whatever.
We're in the Smoky Mountains this
Yeah,
summer for vacation, and we did some hiking. And as we were pulling out in our car, there was a little black bear that kind of walked uh,
yeah,
in front of our car. And so I lowered the window to take a video, and Julie's like, "Roll up the window, roll up the window." I'm like, "This thing isn't like." It's like obviously slowly walking away from us. It's not going to turn
yeah,
around and be like, "Ha!" and just jump in our car window. Uh,
yeah. Black bears are
so,
kinda Humpty Dumpty, though. They're just kinda scavengers. It's the
right.
brown bears on the West Coast you need to be careful of.
Hey, Bear. So, as I introduced you as Ambush, and that was your trail name as you were hiking the
Yeah.
Appalachian Trail. How did you get that?
Well, trail names are given to you. You can't
Right.
choose them, and so they usually have to happen to you. So, like, I had a friend whose name was Trip Root because he always tripped over roots.
Mm.
It wasn't a Tolkien reference, he was just clumsy, right?
So it
So,
seems like you made out good then, because Ambush,
I did
that's
kinda luck
amazing
out.
name.
There are worse names that I encountered, and,
Have it Did you guys ever sorry, this is in my head, we have to talk about it. Uh, have you guys ever seen the movie, Man of the House with Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Chevy Chase? And they're in, like so Chevy Chase is Jonathan Taylor Thomas's, like, stepdad or whatever, and they're in, like, the movie version of Boy Scouts,
Right.
and they give each other names, and Jonathan Taylor Thomas names him Squatting Dog, because he doesn't like his stepdad,
Oh, yeah, I think I
and
do remember that.
and Chevy Chase is like, "Squatting dog? Like, you couldn't come up with anything better than that? Like, didn't you have any pets when you were younger?" And he goes, "I had a squirrel named Numbnuts." So, you were neither squatting dog, nor numbnuts,
Uh,
nor tripping root. You were ambushed, so
yeah.
continue telling us how you got that name was given to you.
Well, so I did the AT because I left a church that had essentially imploded because it was found that the senior pastor had affairs over 18
Mm,
years. All right. And so when I left, that was my attempt to try to be put back together and to
mm,
walk out all that. And so on the way down, two friends were on the ride with me, and we listened to a sermon from Brennan Manning before he passed away. So he wrote a number of really great books. The Ragamuffin Gospel is one of them. But in there, in that sermon, he talks about how he went and lived in a cave for like 6 or 7 months, hoping to be ambushed by Jesus. And so my friends, they dubbed me. They came down and did the first week of the AT with me. But when I left, they also dubbed me Ambush. Like, you're out here to be ambushed.
Hmm.
So then it became almost like 6.5 months of a new identity. But it also reminded me the reason why I was out there was to be ambushed.
mm.
So actually, I really did luck out having a pretty meaningful name compared
Yeah,
to some of the others.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we were talking and setting this up, you joked that you are your unofficial chaplain for your local REI. What did you mean by that, John?
Yeah. Well, I started working at one about a little more than a month ago, which is probably a long time coming because I bought a lot of things from there and I
I
could
get
have
a discount.
benefited from the employee discount, right? However, uh, for the most part, most of the other employees have they've got some understanding that I used to work in a church, but not all of them. And it's just fascinating because when you work in ministry world, you're expected to be doing quote ministry. And the way I think of it now, it's like actually to me, it's just life. It's not really
Mm,
like I'm not getting paid to do this. I actually enjoy talking with the other employees between lulls when customers are coming in, and I actually find myself doing pastoral counseling, spiritual direction, things like that. And it's just very interesting doing I'm not sure if I like using the word ministry without using the
Right.
terms. It's really just listening to people, caring about them, doing active listening and reflecting back to them like the deep virtues that make life worthwhile. And so, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Unofficial chaplain.
yeah, I think organized religion could do better to seek to decentralize,
Yeah,
ministry of like, no, it's being a Christian, it's doing life,
right.
helping one another out, sharing gospel truths with one another or listening and allowing other people to share gospel truths with you in that reciprocal nature of what relationship in the body of Christ and in the world
Yeah,
should look like.
Yeah, that's good. I was listening recently to the Holy Post podcast, not a sponsor. They have a mini series that they're doing on why you're still a Christian or something like that. And their first episode was with Lecrae, and it at one part he said, um, I think Phil Vischer asked him like, "Do you still consider your music career a ministry?" And he said ministry is just where your feet are. And I really liked that answer
okay.
because I I recently have left the church that I was at for 12 years, and 3 years prior to that, I was going to school and working at a church. So for 15 years, I've been in like paid official ministry, and it's been funny and eye-opening for me to now be working another job, um, and having to do the things I've told people to do for for 15 years. That uh, I'm still in ministry, right? Like I'm still
Yeah.
working with people, and I still have an opportunity to reflect the love of Jesus, and as both John and Dan, as you have just put it, to listen to others, to allow the Spirit to speak through them to me, to hopefully allow the Spirit to speak through me to others as well.
Mhm.
And so that's been really cool, and it's something that I could have. Several months ago and several years ago that I could have articulated that people should
Yeah,
do, but now it's a lived experience for me. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool and different.
yeah. I wanna say I think it's towards, like, 2/3 of the way through Mere Christianity. C.S. Lewis talks about how if this whole Christian religion isn't actually about creating little Christs all around with a lowercase l and lowercase c, then it's not doing its job.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we as Christians and sometimes professional ministry, Dan, you said the great word, decentralize it. Sometimes we outsource, like, oh no, we pay that person to be the
Right.
Christ in the community. When
Hmm.
actually there's the old tradition is like we all have this responsibility to be little Christs, no
Mhm.
matter where, what was the phrase? Wherever our feet are on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool stuff.
So, John, let's get to why we brought you on here. Dave and I have had, you know, lots of interactions. We can't even sniff near an REI. Can't wear a backpack without being hounded by thousands of listeners with
People
this same question.
see flannel.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
walk near the tree line,
Hmm.
and just people are popping out of the woods, and they want to
They,
know
yeah,
one
they all have
question is on their
one
mind.
question, and that is, what is the gospel according to hiking?
Ah. Now, I think that that's almost easier to say if it was like a philosophy, like what's the gospel according to Kant or Kierkegaard. Hiking's a verb though.
Mm.
So that kind of tweaks it. I think
That's why we're here to ask the hard questions.
the hard pressing ones, right?
Yes, yes.
I think I might say something close to this, and maybe this will get close. Um, in my life experience doing the Appalachian Trail, you start at Springer Mountain in Georgia and you finish at Katahdin in Maine. So central Georgia is central Maine. The beginning and the end are fixed points, right? But the middle stuff, you don't know what it's going to look like. You can have pictures of the start plaque you're supposed to touch. You can see pictures of the final sign that you touch on Katahdin. So you know what the beginning and the end look like. But it's up to you to do every single step between them. And you don't know if you're going to meet a bear or a moose or something else on the way. And I think that that might be a really great analogy for for the spiritual life, that God is the Alpha and the Omega for every one of us. We know what the beginning and the end is, but the middle stuff is all an adventure. And I really like this poem. There's a guy named Antonio Machado. He talks about how, pilgrim, there is no path. Paths are made by walking. And your
Mm.
path is different from mine. Our paths are different from someone else's. But this life is supposed to be adventurous. And I really love the idea that God is the Alpha and the Omega, the start and the finish, the beginning and the end, the source and the completion of all things. And I think it's just really wonderful to, at least in this sense, whenever you hike, if you're there with other people, there's no cheerleaders, there's no coach. It doesn't matter what your degrees are, how old you are, what your income is. We all just suffered that last mountain in the rain, you know? And so there's a great equalizer.
Mm.
And I think that hiking is a maybe a really wonderful metaphor for the spiritual life. Like there's a equalizing thing. No one's better than someone else. So all of that is, it's like life just gets stripped down. One of my favorite things about hiking is all your decisions are narrowed down to just like four. Where am I going to sleep tonight? How am I going to filter water? Or where can I find water? Will I need to put on my rain jacket? And then am I going to get hurt along the way? But otherwise, you don't have to really worry about a whole lot. And for me personally, I think I met some of the truest people while hiking. Because out here in civilization, out here in like society, we all can have a tendency to put on a mask, put on a personality that we believe other people will love the most or like the most or want to hire or give promotions to. And so sometimes we put up a front.
Right.
But when you start hiking, those masks start to drop off and you start to see people for their true selves. And I actually very much think that many of the teachings of Jesus, especially around hypocrisy, are a lot about learning how to take off your mask and be who you truly are. And so I don't know if that got close to your question, but there's so many analogies to the spiritual life that I think are present in the wilderness.
Yeah, I love you talking about the great equalizer, and this is something that you're like you did the trail with other people, and that
Yeah.
you're not it's not a sport in where you're going against them, but
Mm.
everybody has this common goal that
Right.
you're seeking to help one another.
Yeah.
And in the real world, like you said, like, or, off trail, it's hard to do because a lot of times we pit ourselves in competitions with one another. I have
Yeah.
4 daughters, and I feel myself constantly saying, like, "We are on the same team."
Mm.
So
Uh,
when one daughter gets student of the month, we all win. When somebody scores a goal, we all win because 'cause we're on the same team. You're not competing against them,
right.
but we're encouraging, pushing each other. Hebrews 10:10, encourage one another towards love and good deeds, that we're all on the team. We all are striving towards something together. And it's not like you're trying to beat somebody on the trail, like, oh, I want to get a day ahead of this person. It's like, no, I want to
No.
make sure we all get there together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That just made me think about, and maybe it's because as we record, the Eagles are playing tonight. But Nick Sirianni, coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, has said, if you want to go fast, fly alone. If you want to go far, fly together.
Yeah.
And I think hiking is the same way. Like if you're by yourself, you could probably move at a pretty good pace. And when you're with others, it might slow you down a little bit, but it's going to allow you to go further. You're going to be able to uh, work together.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to share resources, and even I think there's probably something immaterial there about being together that does add an energy to it. That adds something that is life giving to being together, and that's true in the actual hiking experience, but that's true in our spiritual lives as well. That you know, however, whatever metric you want to use, like I could read a lot of books if I didn't have a family. I could listen to a lot of sermons if I didn't have a job. I could educate myself. I could learn a lot. But if I'm not living out my faith with others, then what good is that? Like, has it actually
Yeah.
produced anything, you know? So I think that that communal aspect does change it. And I love the what really stood out to me in your answer, John, was the beginning and the end. That we do have, uh, Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith, right? He wrote the beginning and he perfects it. He is the finisher of our faith as well. Our spiritual lives begin and end in Jesus, but there's a whole bunch in between that matters as well. And there's certainly an act of faith to starting a hike like hiking the Appalachian Trail. There's an act of faith in stepping into, let me see what this Jesus guy is about and what he has to offer. Um, but it's not just that starting point. Now there's a lot more that's ahead of us. And that journey is really what shapes us and defines our lives more than just starting it. And well, I know this end is coming, so I don't have to do anything. No, there's a lot of work between here and there
Yeah.
that has to be done.
Yeah. And you guys have both of you now have referenced the book of Hebrews. Dan did with Hebrews 10, and then Dave, you just did with Hebrews.
Is that 12 or 11?
Is it 12? Yeah. But what's fascinating is that towards the end of the letter of Hebrews, there's a wonderful paragraph that kind of echoes back to just mountaintop experiences. It says, "You have not come to a mountain of fear, but you have come to a mountain of grace." And it's supposed to be a contrast between Sinai and Golgotha,
Mhm.
which I don't know if I've just found this out like a month ago or so, is that the Hebrew word for mountain is also the same word root for the word for bush, because Moses had a conversation with a bush on a mountain. And
Mm,
so there's some fun wordplay happening with the Hebrew there. Here's the bush mountain, the Sene Sinai. You're like, oh, that's kind of cool. So there's something to be said. Like God has been actually um, hiding in bushes for a very long time. And when we surround ourselves with technology and distraction, it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that every bush is already on fire with the
mm,
presence of God. Yeah.
yeah.
So, John, what would you say to Aunt Ethel comes up to you and says, "You hippies need to get off the trail and get back to church. Stop worshiping nature and start worshiping God."
Aunt Ethel, huh?
Mhm.
Does she have an accent? Because I hear like an old German accent some for some reason.
She's a regular listener of the
Yeah.
podcast, so
Oh,
Yeah,
she is?
and
Oh, sorry. Aunt
she
Ethel.
she chimes in a lot with the
yeah.
Oh, okay.
contrarian
Yeah.
opinion on things.
She's a hate listener, I think.
She
Right.
just, listens to tell us what we did wrong.
Right.
Uh, well, I might say to Aunt Ethel that actually there's like a lot of things to pack into that because she's a very conventional Christian in that sense.
Right.
But there's like there's this beautiful arc that I think happens in the Bible that actually is very deeply present in a lot of the larger Christian tradition. And I mean this. We like to talk about humans as having the image of God, right? The Imago Dei.
Right.
Well, the early church said two things. They said that there's something called vestiges, which translates that everything has the fingerprints, footprints, or soul print of God. Anything natural actually already has God's fingerprints all over it. And one of the things that we've unfortunately done is we've said that anything that we've made, like a building, with our hands is what's sacred. But actually, anything that has God's fingerprints is already sacred. So I might encourage her to expand her view of the church. It need not be bound to a building. It's wherever two or three are gathered. And I've had some very insightful, meaningful, honest conversations with quote unquote non Christians about Jesus that were of a depth that I'd actually had not had even in years of working in a church. So we maybe need to just expand. But The second thing would be this: the very early church said that Jesus is the Word of God and that the Bible is the Word of God, who points to Jesus, right? But then there's another scripture, and they would say that nature is another book of scripture. And that's maybe controversial, but that's what the early church used to say before Constantine legalized Christianity in 317. Scripture is what we read, but nature tells us something else. Because words are good, but we have a fixation in the Western culture on words. And I love Soren Kierkegaard. He talks about it like this. He says, at a certain point in human history, the word became flesh. And ever since then, we've been trying to turn him back into words again and not realize that there's a deep presence of the Christ in all things. And that's actually, I understand what Aunt Ethel is saying. You got to stop worshiping God, uh, or stop worshiping nature. It's not God. It's like, well, that's true. But actually, um, if you were to read the book of Colossians or Philippians, it talks about how God is in all things, through all things, for all things, sustaining all things, behind and beneath. And so there's actually a very strong tradition of paying attention to the prepositions of where God is. And I love this little wordplay, and then we can shift if you want. We have, I think, unfortunately made Christianity a very propositional religion. You have to adhere to these propositions, but actually it's a prepositional religion because prepositions are what make relationship, right? Between, above, below, within, all of those are prepositions. And we maybe need to pay attention to the relationship between all things that has God as its common denominator, maybe a little bit more than our uh, propositions that we can sometimes argue about.
Mm, yeah,
Mm.
that's
Does that
good.
make
I
sense? Was that too
It does.
theological?
No, I
No, that was
that's
good.
good. I thought of, to as you're talking, different scriptures are popping into mind, and Psalm 19 was one of them,
Mhm.
which begins that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims His handiwork.
Yeah,
When you're in a building, you can't see the heavens, right? And like you're saying, John, like buildings declare the handiwork of the men who made them. um but the skies, the forest, and the mountains
yeah,
declare the glory of the one who made them, and that's God. And then Acts 17, where Paul is talking, he says that the God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man. um, and
mhm,
so we encounter God not in temples made by man, but in the temple that God created, which is the
right,
heavens and the earth. So that's good. And last thing that came to mind as you were talking, because you mentioned prepositions. Um,
yeah,
Sky Jitani has, not a sponsor, has a book called With, and it's he talks about how we often we think of the Christian life as either being for God. Um, I forget, he has a few different ones, but that's the one that sticks out. But like for God, right? We have to serve God. I'm doing this for God, but really, the Christian life is supposed to be with God. Um, and so I think that that
yeah,
preposition is an important one, and I think we can be with God in nature. We can be with God in
sure.
a building, like you said, wherever two or more are gathered.
Can This is a great reference. I actually had a number of conversations with people on the AT that were Buddhists. I met a lot of Muslims,
Mm,
agnostics, ex-evangelicals before the term was coined. And what I really enjoyed, there was a this one kind of conversation that was like, "Oh, you were a Presbyterian, I was a Catholic."
mm,
And so it was like there was a difference right there, right? So you worship in that building, we worship in these buildings, and so we're not on the same team, right?
Hmm.
But actually, it made me think of John 4 in the moment, where Jesus meets a woman at the well, and she says, "Oh, I'm
mm.
not one of you. I don't worship at Jerusalem. I worship out on Mount Chorazim." And Jesus says, "Oh, don't worry about location. because the true believers will worship wherever there's spirit and in truth. And so there's actually like this omnipresence of where Christians can meet and where people can encounter God. There really is no off limits for where God is not able to be found. And it's John's gospel too. Like let's grow beyond these temple what's the word I want to use? Temple addictions. That sounds maybe strong. But I mean, it's Paul's brilliance when he says we have become the temple.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure if modern Christianity has caught up to that theological statement. We ourselves are the temple of God now. Yeah.
Yeah, great
I
great
think
stuff. I hate to tell you, but, Aunt Ethel left. She had a reservation for brunch, so
Okay.
she didn't get most of that, but,
Oh, too bad.
appreciate
We
you
can
sharing.
listen later. Is she a
Uh,
sponsor?
not a sponsor.
Not a
Not a
sponsor.
sponsor. Aunt Ethel, come on.
Yeah, bake sale is coming up later. She's gonna try and get
Well,
some
can
money
I
for
actually
but
ask you guys that question? When you think of nature and you think of wilderness, is your first response that it's sacred or that it's profane? Or is it something in the middle?
I think sacred. I think
Yeah.
part of the I think the battle in that has sometimes come from what you're saying, whereas I view science and nature and archaeology that it's all backing up uh, the things of God,
Mhm.
the Creator's hand. That it's not something that God's scared of. God's not scared of, oh, they're
Mhm.
going to come up with this, they're going to find this thing out that's going to disprove me, that it's all just going to build up, pointing to that there is a creator, there is a God that loves us and is reaching out towards us, that it's not something that like we don't have to defend God in that way. Like
No.
his
Mhm.
truth is gonna his truth is gonna to reign. I think my only pushback, or in the vein of Aunt Ethel, would be that uh well, people are like, well, nature is my church. I don't have to be a part of a community. Or, I was burned by a church once. And so let me just remove myself and I can be a silo Christian. Like I can just be a Christian between me and God, out in nature, that I don't need anyone else. And I think the example of Christ in the Gospels is pointing to, no, we're meant to live amongst each other, even in the messiness, even in the hurt and the pain, that we are designed to be in relationship with other people.
Yeah, I guess that like that line that you're kind of talking about, Dan, is like a going back to the idea of decentralization. Like that can be good, but if by decentralizing you also mean individualizing, then that's probably not right. Like we're still looking for community. Um, that seems to be the through line from what you're saying, that like
Right.
if you've been burned by a church, then yeah, like I think it's very natural that you might be like, I at least for a period of time, all churches might be toxic for you. It might not be a place that you can step into and encounter God in healthy and helpful ways. But hopefully you are surrounded by people uh who can share the love of
Right.
Jesus with you in ways that are healthy. So yeah, I think too, like I'm not the most like outdoorsy person, but I do. There is something even just about like simple walks for me. We've and like going, we did an episode on yard work. Like when I'm able to kind of just have my body in motion to put off some of the more modern distractions of my TV, my computer, my smartphone, listening to podcasts. Once I've caught up on the gospel according to, then I can put my
Of
phone
course.
away
Of course.
and go be with God, right? Priorities. No, but when I'm able to set aside modern distractions and just be outside and have my body in movement, there is a communion with the Spirit and with God in those moments for me. So I would definitely say that uh, my experience has been that it is certainly a holy place.
Yeah, especially for the sake of transcendence. Um, Augustine from the early church, he said that there were three directions by which you can experience God. First is from looking out at nature. You can experience God. That's one path. Another one would be looking inward, which I understand some people might view that as pride, but that's not what Augustine meant. He meant like examine your own interior depths, like
Mhm.
get to know your personal wounds. Where's the hurt that's inside? Because God is maybe what's that? The John Foreman line, like the wound is where the light shines through, right?
Mm.
He actually
Mhm.
got that from Augustine. But then the other one is anything that reaches or pushes us towards goodness, beauty, truth, love. The early church said all four of those things are alternative names for God. And I think, I mean, this is why sunsets are so gorgeous. This is why we love
The
to see a
pollution.
beautiful sunrise, right? Because actually, that's an beauty is just another channel by which God makes himself known. Can we
Mm.
say it that way?
Sure.
Sure.
And
You just did.
there's, okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah, we have become so theologic oriented that we've maybe lost out on theo beauty or theo aesthetics. And that's actually kind of interesting because there's more of a turn towards what about these other disciplines can help us know God better, other than just theologic. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's like experiencing the creation helps us get to know the
Yeah.
creator, right? Like it's kind of that, I guess, I don't know, that simple or whatever. But yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
You guys ready for the Bible breakdown?
Oh, here it comes.
Okay.
And here comes the breakdown.
All right, so for the Bible breakdown today, I want you to tell me if you could hike any trail or any story in the Bible, what would it be? So you're inserting yourself, right now you could go to places in Israel and, hike along that or take
Right.
the journey. But I want you to take yourself back into the story and that you're becoming a part of this story that has something to do with a trail or hiking. And which would that be?
Uh the two first ones that came to mind is when Jesus is in the wilderness for 40 days. We don't know a whole lot except for what might have happened in one afternoon in those 40 days.
Right.
But then the other story is actually, was it First Kings 19, where
Mm,
Elijah goes up on top of a mountain, hides in a cave, and then he experiences a thunderstorm, a
Mm.
whirlwind, and an earthquake, and then God speaks to him in a still small voice. I think that story has got so much packed into it. I would love to have that experience, climbing a mountain and then waiting to hear nothing but a whisper. Yeah.
mm, yeah.
How
Yeah.
about you, Dave?
Uh, I also two stood out among those that came to my mind. One might be stretching it, the hiking analogy, but this one would not be. I kind of like Mount Sinai. The first time Moses
Yeah.
ascends Mount Sinai, and God comes down. Um, that like with Israel with him. Um, I I want to experience that, but also I know that like I would just also be part of the Israelites who kind of screwed up and like end up making the golden calf, and then that so probably doesn't end well for me, but I do feel like that would be a cool experience to be a part of. And then the other, I'm just going to imagine that the road was inclined and rough, therefore it becomes a trail story. But at the end of Matthew's gospel question mark where Jesus is on the road to Emmaus and he shows up to the two
Oh,
men who
I
are
think that's
walking.
Luke.
Is it Luke? At
Yeah.
the end of Luke, where uh, they're talking about everything that happens, and Jesus explains to them how all of Scripture pointed to Him, and like that's what Luke tells us that Jesus said, but he doesn't lay out what Jesus said. And I would love to
Yeah.
hear I would love to travel with the rabbi and hear him tell me how all of Scripture points to him.
Sweet. Give
What about
me
you,
I,
Dan?
I like a good competition. So give me Elijah and the prophets of Baal, you know,
Mm,
I want to see the fire fall. I want to mock some other people that asking him where their god is if he's going to the bathroom and stuff. That'd
Wow.
be fun. And then I'd be there. Maybe Elijah just needed a friend because he's goes from that mountaintop literal experience
Mhm.
to then being chased after, and he's like, God, why don't you just kill me? When he just needed a snack. It's important while hiking that you make sure you have your, trail mix and you
A
have your
good trail
protein
mix, yeah.
Sure.
bars, and so that he,
Although
then
water is more important than that, but
comes to
yeah.
terms. Yeah. All right. So, let us know, in the comments what Bible story you wanna be hiking along with. Are you guys ready for a game?
Let's
Yeah,
do
go
it.
for it.
Okay. So this game we've played before, it's called Don't Be Stressing. We got an object lesson.
Nice.
So you show up to church and the the pastor's all upset that Aunt Ethel, she got food poisoning at brunch, and so she's unable to give the pastor's pals kids lesson, and so they were throwing you right into it. I'm going to give you a hiking object and you need to quickly give me the object lesson for it.
Oh, okay.
Think you can handle that? A lot of times I have them in my hands, but I'm just gonna give you the word,
Okay.
today.
Paint
All right.
paint a word theater of the mind here.
Right. All right. So the first one, you just, brought up the importance of it. So, out of the purple bag with, Jesus and flowers crocheted on it, I'm pulling out a water bottle. Give me the object lesson.
Okay. We are all the bottle, and we're all trying to desperately get as much love into us as we can. And we'll go to people, we'll try to do things, everything we can, but actually we can only hold so much. It's actually just so much easier to take the bottle and throw it into the ocean.
Not literally, don't throw bottles in the
Right,
ocean.
right, right. But it's you can't fit the ocean into a thimble, but you can throw the thimble into the ocean.
Right.
You can't get all of God into you, but if you can realize that you can be surrounded by God's love all the time, there's nothing left to do except just live in grace infinitely. I have no idea if that would land with middle schoolers, though.
Drink from the
They'll
hose,
probably just
not
take
from the
away
bottle.
that I said pollute the ocean.
Dave, you got anything?
I would probably go some uh it's going back to John 4, right? Yeah, anyone
Oh,
who drinks from this water bottle will thirst again, but Jesus gives
oh,
us a water that from a well from which we only have to draw once, and then we will never
yeah,
thirst again.
And just so throw it into the ocean
Yeah.
or
yeah.
any body of water near you, take your
Yes.
water
Or
bottle.
any body of water near you.
All right,
Lakes are fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
next object lesson. Oh, I need your help. Here is our object. Can you please share with the students about hiking boots?
I have no idea. I just went down like 100 rabbit holes in my head. I would say get rid of them. You don't need these
throw,
boots
throw 'em in the
Throw 'em in the ocean.
in the ocean. Yeah, but I gotta say it's
John, I
because
think whatever's happening with you wanting to throw things in the ocean, you got to talk to your therapist about it. You got to unpack this with a professional.
He wants to go
I
fishing,
I
maybe.
hated my hiking boots. That was my reason. My hiking boots hurt so much because your foot
Mm,
can't flex and bend. And so
mm,
sometimes you just
Oh,
clump and it hurts the muscles of your feet over a couple thousand
so
miles.
don't be so
yeah.
rigid.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but then maybe I could somehow tie it into Moses taking off his sandals in Exodus 3. Get rid of the boots, let your feet touch the holy ground.
There you go.
Yeah.
If God wanted us to wear hiking boots, we would have been born with them, you know?
Mm,
All
preach.
right. The next one. Don't be stressing. We got an object lesson on Gorp.
I don't know what Gorp
What's
is.
Gorp?
You don't know what Gorp is?
No.
Granola, oatmeal, raisins, peanuts. Gorp.
Oh. Oh, that's simple. Oh, yeah. Just throw it in the ocean. I'm kidding.
Just add water, right?
No, no, no. Just had water. No, I would say gorp is really important. For me, my gorp was actually like Swedish fish or gummy worms because you need something for that really bad day when you're hiking in rain. You just need like some comfort food, right?
Mm.
Mm.
So I might say something like On the trail, having really good food can feel like a sacrament. It is just holy and you look forward to it. And maybe there's some connection in there about taking communion. Yeah, a sacred meal along the way. Maybe that goes back to that alpha and omega and then trail in the middle. Make sure you have some sacramental gorp along the way.
Hmm.
I did not expect I would say that sentence when I woke up today.
Well, you don't know where the trail's gonna lead you, John.
That's true. That's true.
It's good. It's good.
All right, next one, hammock. Don't be stressing. We got an object lesson, and it's a hammock.
I would just
Oh,
go with Jesus. Jesus took naps. Be like Jesus.
yeah,
Enter
that's a good one.
enter into the rest of God.
I don't know how to connect this. The only thing that came to my mind was Peter having the dream of the sheet coming down 3 times with all the animals on it. Because I woke up one time in a hammock and I woke up and there was a squirrel on my lap.
Mm.
It actually happened like it was a full black squirrel, which only happens up in like the Northeast. It wasn't a brown squirrel.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
That's not an object lesson. I guess I just
And
told an
then
anecdote.
did you then throw it into the ocean?
Yeah. Get out of here. All right, last one. Don't be stressing. We got an object lesson, and it is a walking stick. Walking
Mm.
stick.
Oh yeah. Those are necessary. They look goofy if you have the hiker poles, but you really do need them.
Some extra stability,
Yes,
having
yes.
an extra
Oh yeah. That's good too.
appendage. A rope of 3 strands is not easily broken. We need each other. You need a third person, an aid, a Barnabas. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, John. Do you have any where people can check you out? Listen to more of your deep ambush theological spewings.
Yeah. I mean, so when I came back from the Appalachian Trail, I started a podcast called Begin Again. Previously, it was called Ambushed, but I felt the need to begin again, and I did.
Mm,
So I rebranded it, but I haven't done any episodes on that recently. But there's probably close to like 175 episodes up already. So Begin
yeah,
Again, and then I have a website, johnchafee.com,
And
where I
you're
go ahead.
writing, right?
Yeah, I've actually written 2 books already that are out in paperback. One's a book of parables. That's a fun one. That's a good one. The other one is a Lenten devotional. And then I recently just put out a book for free just called Breadcrumbs, which is like 260 pages of straight to digital. I thought, why put it up on Amazon when I could just put it out for free? So I did. And yeah, there's probably another one that's going to come out later this in about a month. Yeah,
awesome. So we'll
So the
link to some of those.
Mhm.
You can have a chance to read and check out.
sure. But thank you so much. This is fun.
But yeah.
I wasn't expecting the object lesson
Mm.
to be quite as rigorous as it was.
Yeah.
That
Well,
that's why Aunt
sometimes
Ethel's got to watch what she eats. Putting
sometimes
us
the
on the
trail
spot.
sometimes the trail is flat and smooth, and
Yeah, that's
sometimes,
true.
you gotta climb up or climb down. Uh, so thank you all for joining us out there for the Gospel According to. Remember to follow us on all social media platforms that have existed ever or currently exist: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, or mail drops at your local AT stop. Follow us at TGAT Podcast. Thank you for sharing the Gospel According to with your family, with your friends, and everyone you pass on the trail, wherever you're
Mm.
hiking. Just let them know.
Yeah. You can also send us mailbag questions when you're at that mail drop on the Appalachian Trail. If you have any questions, reach out on those social media or just carve your question into a tree if
Yep.
you want,
We'll
and
find
we'll
it.
see it. And we'll reply underneath. All right, we'll carve in our answer. You can also email us at tgatpod@gmail.com to let us know the coordinates of the tree that you carved into so that we can go and answer it. Uh, please do your part in obeying the Great Commission by helping us spread the gospel according to podcast. And one great way to do that is leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. I can tell you what, if you were hiking the Appalachian Trail, experts suggest that you could leave roughly 5 million reviews in that time of the podcast
It's easy.
because what I'm saying is it takes a lot less time to leave a 5-star rating and review than it does to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Same.
So please take a few minutes out of your day, whatever, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, click the 5 stars, write a little thing, we'll read it, it'll be funny. People will love it. You'll love it. Okay.
Mhm.
You'll like it.
And you'll
Uh,
feel almost as rewarding an experience as hiking from
I do.
Georgia to Maine.
I have to imagine that hearing me and Dan riff about your review is the same way that John felt when he finished hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
I mean,
But
we have not done that, but, we can just put ourselves in the mental space of what
yeah,
that might
it's
feel
got
like.
to be pretty similar. And John is nodding vigorously. He absolutely agrees. So thank you for joining us today on your favorite Hump Day podcast. This was the gospel according to hiking.
Take the bottle and throw it into the ocean.
And just so throw it into the ocean
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
any body. Throw it in the
throw him in the ocean.
Oh yeah, just throw it in the ocean. I'm kidding. I woke up and there was a squirrel on my lap.
Did you
And
then throw it into the ocean?
it's
John, I
because
think whatever's happening with you wanting to throw things in the ocean, you got to talk to your therapist about it. You got to unpack this